Hello and welcome back to my Dandelion Diaries. Today I want to talk about a new to me brand of inks, and specifically the fact that all of these are considered chroma shaders. So I had seen this brand on Instagram. It's called Kitty Ink Pot. So that's the little bottles here. You can see Kitty Ink Pot season 4, sorry, on the big bottle. This one is called Resting in the Evening Breeze. All of their bottles, to my understanding, have the Chinese name on it. It does not have any English at all. So I wrote this on the side of the box because I do not read Chinese yet, maybe someday, and that's gonna help me out with that. Anyways, I ordered this from a company called Soe and Soe over in Australia, and I believe that is the only place you can find these inks. If I'm incorrect, please tell me in the comments. I would love to know if these are available on like AliExpress or maybe somewhere else that inks from China are typically sold. Anyways, I wanted to share how they were packaged. They were all vacuum sealed in these little pouches, which makes me incredibly comfortable knowing that I live in Texas in the United States, and coming from Australia, these inks came all the way and are perfectly safe because they're literally vacuum sealed in a little baggie. So these little 3 ink pots here, and the other sample was vacuum sealed too, but I just wanted to show one of them how it was done. So I'm just going to cut this open and get myself situated here, and then we're going to go over supplies and we're going to start swatching because I am very excited for these inks. All right, like I mentioned, let's go over supplies really quick. This is my A5 Hobonichi notebook with the blank Sanzen Tomoe River paper. I'm going to be using my Pilot Iro-utsushi, I think it's Iro-utsushi, just that's it. Oh, Iro-utsushi. Yeah. Anyways, this dip pen, a pipette, my little MU acrylic stamp block. I have some jars of water up here, and my little t-shirt that I will be using as my towel. Yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and get started with the bottle first. So this is, like I said, Resting in the Evening Breeze. This is what the bottle shape looks like. It looks like it has a really nice heavy glass base, which I appreciate for those of us prone to knocking things over. And I'm not going to say what colors these appear to be until the end. I'll just describe them wet and then describe them dry because I've never seen them before in person, and I have a very strong feeling since they are chroma shading, they are going to look very different on different things. So this ink wet is a bit more of a red, orange, pinky color, and then it's already drying as I'm talking, which gives me high hopes for a strong dry time. But it's already changing to a completely different color while it's drying, which is really interesting to me. Writing with it with this dip pen, I specifically chose it because it has a very thin nib, and I really wanted to see if these inks would even be legible in maybe a finer nibbed pen, because I do find that certain chroma shading inks, look at you, Sailor, don't do really well in a very fine nib. So I'm curious about these. Obviously, a dip pen is not the same as a full-fledged fountain pen, but hopefully this will give me some idea. The next one is called No Pendant Braiding, and this was one of the style of bottles that Soe and Soe offered. It's a 5 ml sample, and then these other ones in the normal sample tubes are 2 ml. So I think if you hit them on, like when they release new versions of the inks, you can get more of the 5 mls if that's something you prefer. So No Pendant Braiding is starting off as a nice dusty gray purple, a bit more of a red violet lean in the purple here. It's definitely more of the redder side versus the bluer side. So I would consider this to be a warm purple. I really honestly love the shading it's already producing. I don't see any new colors coming through yet, but overall shade wise it's doing really well. And again, with this dip pen, I felt like it did really decent with the thinner lines that it's giving, and that gives me, again, very high hopes for putting this into a pen. Next up, we have one of the inks that I wanted a bottle of, but they were already sold out, and this one is called a Rabbit Doll with Pointed Ears, and I'm really excited to swatch this one. Okay, this is not at all the color I was anticipating. It is a very nice, soft beige tan color, very light. I do think with the dip nib, it's doing a pretty decent job, at least with writing. I think it is very light and probably going to be pretty illegible in most pens. However, we will wait to see how this shades all the way down. Sometimes when it starts off wet, it starts light and then it dries darker, so hopefully we'll get some kind of action with that. But I will say with writing in the name, it's looking very light, and that would give me the impression that in a fine nibbed pen or an extra fine nibbed pen or a needlepoint pen, we'd probably get the same kind of light variation. Next up is called Caramel Almond Waffles. Love the name. And what an interesting color this one is. It's almost pink, but almost gray. I don't know how, this one's kind of hard to pinpoint an actual color because it looks like it has a bunch of different colors already when it's wet. I do feel like it has a mostly gray tone, but it also has a bit of pink underneath it, so it might come across a bit more pink. Like a dusty pink, but pink gray. But there's also some beigey tones in here too. This one will be really interesting to see once it completely dries. I definitely like the look of it, and it is a bit darker than the last one, so I feel like this one would be a bit more legible because of that. Next up is an ink called A Certain Yam, and I really like this one already. This is like a nice kind of soft brown, and it has a bit of a gray to it as well, but also a bit of a green. Really interested to see how this one dries completely too, because it looks very dynamic as a wet ink. I do think this one, again, is slightly darker than the last two, so it would be a bit more legible. And, you know, writing wise, all of these have been doing really great with this really fine dip nib, so I'm really happy with that too. So it gives me really high hopes. Next up, we have an ink called Misty Lighthouse. And I really like the color of this one already. This is almost a dark, dusty, gray purple color with a bit of a blue tone to it. Really nice. I feel like it's the opposite spectrum of the no pendant braiding at the top there. It's beautiful. Already starting to shade as well. I'm really excited to see all of the shading when I'm done with this, because I'm loving what I'm seeing already, and it's just a really great, I don't know, this is fun. So Misty Lighthouse, kind of a grayish purple. Really excited to see what this one shades down to. Next up, we have one that I think has the longest name, and this one's called Forest Wind Knows Where to Find the Mountain Bird. And I'm really excited about this one too. This was another one that I wanted a bottle of. And I wanted a full bottle of this one because primarily the color is green. Big surprise. But the shading in this on the photos I saw is so cool because it goes almost like a red brown situation. I don't know. I was really excited for this one, and I'm hoping it does not disappoint, and I'm really going to cherish the sample that I have, assuming that I can't get any more of this ink, but we will find out because I have no idea if these are limited edition or anything, or if they don't remake old bottles or whatever. But beautiful ink already as a wet swatch, and I'm excited to see this one dry too. Next up is called A Certain Smog, and I think this one is party to the A Certain Yam collection. I want to say the company does it by seasons, and I don't remember which season goes with which naming system, so I'm sorry about that, but maybe I'll be able to find out before with some editing for the video or something. So the color of this one starts off as almost a green gray, a bit more of like a darker green gray, and I would say that it has almost a smoky look to it, so I feel like Smog is a really great name. I'm sure a lot of these are named after whatever they're named after, but this one I feel like particularly matches its name very well. Same with A Certain Yam, actually, as it's drying in front of me. Anyways, A Certain Smog. It is definitely a greenish gray color wet. We will see what it turns out when it dries, but I think this one is a bit drier, actually, than some of the other inks that I had already swatched here, but it could just be user error. I don't know. All of these have so far done very well with dip nibbing, with this dip nib, and this one did too. It just felt a little bit drier than the other ones. Next up, we have an ink called Butter and Strawberry Bagel. And I don't know why, this one just reminds me a lot of Waringle's The White Rabbit. It is a bit more yellow toned, I'd say a bit stronger towards the yellow orange versus the kind of more red orange that the White Rabbit has. But it definitely is a very light ink, similar to that, when it looks like it's going to have some dark shading with it. In writing, I feel like this one's going to be pretty illegible, sadly, but who knows, maybe in the right pen, you never know. But this is a beautiful color nonetheless. I feel like this would be really fun to do any kind of floral painting with, or any kind of like ink splats, or just having fun with a random colored ink that, you know, maybe you wouldn't use for writing. This is that ink that I think I would choose for that, because it seems to be so interesting already, and it's still wet. So as this one dries, I'm hoping to see some fun colors pop through. It's already starting to get a bit of like a pinky purple situation, so this one might be really exciting, but may not be the best for writing. The second to last ink I have here is called A Certain Peach Tree. Again, I think this is from the same season as like the Certain Smog and the Certain Yam, so I'm thinking it's probably going to be similar to those two. How interesting. This one looks very similar to the Forest Wind Knows Where to Find the Mountain Bird wet. It's got that kind of same green-gray situation going, and it's already starting to show a little bit of red popping through too. Very interesting. This one was very similar to A Certain Smog in that it was a bit more a dry feeling. I don't really want to call these dry because they don't feel dry. They don't feel like, you know, the dry Herbon inks. They don't feel like the Ferris Wheel Press inks that are really dry. They just don't feel the same as the other inks I have swatched here. So I don't want to call it dry, but it is a bit more of a drier feel. So I'd probably say they're average. By no means they're like gushing or anything from what I can feel with the dip nib. But again, this is a dip nib and not a fountain pen. So there's no real way to tell until you get these in a pen. Anyways, on that note, the last ink here is called Elegy of the Fallen. And this one appears to be a bit more of a brown, kind of like a dusty red brown. Really pretty. I didn't expect that color out of this one, actually. I thought it was a different color, but I could be wrong. There's so many here, right? But this is beautiful. I do think it feels a bit more the same as like the Certain Peach Tree and the Certain Smog. I don't know, maybe I'm writing differently with the last page here, I don't know, but it definitely doesn't feel the same. But color-wise, I really like the base color of this, and I'm excited to see what it looks like dry, because it's already starting to pull through some pretty interesting colors as I'm talking. Okay, that is all of the inks that I ordered from Soe and Soe for the Kitty Ink Pot brand. They had a lot more inks to choose from, but I was trying to be considerate of my wallet. But I'm really excited to play a bit more with these inks and maybe explore deeper into the brand if I can find a place where maybe the shipping threshold is a bit different, or I can get them somewhere here in the States that's a little bit easier to find. But overall, really exciting about these inks already. I'm really excited about these inks already because the colors coming through are just wild. On that note, I'm going to let these finish drying. I'll be back in a minute for you guys, and we're going to zoom in, talk all about all of these different colors popping up, and how exciting these chroma shaders are. Okay, I am back. Everything is dry and beautiful. I'm so excited. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in. We're going to talk about all of the different colors and give my final thoughts. So starting off here, we had Resting in the Evening Breeze. I am so thrilled that I have a full bottle of this ink. So base color here is a bit more of like a peachy orange color, and then it has this pink, almost magenta red haloing, and the shade in the middle here is a bit more of a navy, like a soft navy to even a teal, a darker blue teal. It is beautiful. In the writing, it just shows up as that base color here with this medium nib that I used from Pilot. I feel like if you had a really great stub nib or a broad juicy nib, you would get a lot of the shading pulling through in the writing. Really love this color though. Absolutely fantastic. Next, I did this was No Pendant Braiding. This is, again, that kind of soft purple. It kept most of that purple tone from the initial swatch when it was wet. As it dried though, we see lovely little pops of yellow shading popping through. It's almost like a tan, like a yellow tan. It's really pretty. Again, I feel like a lot of these inks, you're not going to get this full range of shading unless you have a very juicy writer, where a lot of ink is pulled in the writing. I think majority of the time you're going to get whatever the base color is, just from what I've experienced. with my first initial opinions of this anyways. Yeah, okay, moving on. This is the next ink here, called A Rabbit Doll with Pointed Ears. Initially, when I swatched this, I was a bit disappointed at how light it was. Still kind of disappointed that it's pretty light, but the shading in this is really what I was after and why I wanted a full bottle of this ink. But I will settle for the sample that I have. Anyways, it is a nice kind of tan beigey color, almost Caucasian gray tone on the base here. It just really looks like, if you've ever been to New Mexico, like White Sands, New Mexico Park, it's kind of like the sand. It's like a white tan color. Yeah. The shading is a bit more of a soft mossy green, even like a jade green color. It's really, really pretty. I feel like if, again, you had a nice juicy pen, you would be able to get a lot of that green to pull through in the writing, which might make this ink a bit more legible. But I'd say with the medium pilot nib I just used here, the legibility is not that great, and at least for the base color. Next, we had Caramel Almond Waffles, and just a moment of appreciation. A moment of appreciation. This is so cool. So the base color of this is almost like a pink gray, and as it dried, it turned into this deep navy blurple with this kind of reddish pink haloing, very similar to the haloing that's up here. But as you can see, the shading color is slightly different. This one's a bit more teal. This one's a bit more purple. I would consider this one to be blurple though. It definitely has blue and purple together, but the shading of this is so cool. I also like how you can see where I pushed in my little stamp round. Like, you can see the little, I guess, shadowing from that. That's really interesting. I'd be interested to see how this would do in painting, just because the way it dried is so unique. So I feel like if you were to paint something with this, it would look really, really cool. But writing wise, I feel like this one is pretty legible. It's a light ink, yes, but it's not as light as this other one over here. I feel like this would still be pretty legible in most things. Granted, it would depend, again, on the pen. Then at the bottom here, we had a certain Yam. I really surprisingly like this one. It reminds me a lot of Sailor Yurmeku's Amamoyoi, just slightly more brown, and the shading is a bit more purple versus pink. I really think it's a great color. Shading, and it's beautiful. Base of this is like an olivey brown, and then again that shading is a bit more of like a pink brown. It has this almost like dark gray haloing around the shading too, so again, a juicy nib would probably showcase most of that. But in writing, I don't know, I really like this kind of color that popped through up here that's a bit more of a soft muted like mauvey color. It's really pretty. Yeah, definitely a fan of that one. And then we had Misty Lighthouse. This one reminds me of a Colorverse ink that I recently tried, and I'm totally spacing on the name, so I apologize. But the base color of this is a bit more of a soft blue gray, has some deeper blue haloing, and the shading is almost like an orange, yellow, brown situation. It's really pretty. I think the name of this one's really nice too, Misty Lighthouse. It reminds me of, like, you know, the rocks of a base of a lighthouse with the like water spray like coming up. I don't know. It's really pretty. I like it. I think in writing too, it's really pretty. It's just not as exciting as the shading. So for this one, I'd probably want to use a juicier pen again, just to get more of that kind of range of shade going on. Then we had Forest Wind Knows Where to Find the Mountain Bird, the longest name out of all of these. And again, another ink that I was hoping to get more of, but I will settle for the sample that I do have. But this ink is beautiful. When we started, it was a bit more of like a greenish color, and as it dried, it's turned into more of an olivey brown, stronger on the brown. And then the shading here is almost a, again, magenta, purpley color, maybe even a fuchsia color. And the shading is kind of similar to that of the Resting in the Evening Breeze, in that it has a bit more of that kind of teal blue. It's just, it's so pretty. It's so pretty. I like the color of this one too, and just the writing with the base. It's very similar to some other kind of more soft brown inks that I think we're used to, like Oyster Hour or Sesame Oil by Lennon Toolbar. Obviously, I don't have those inks on cards to compare with this right now, but maybe in the future I will try to do some comparisons. I don't know, but it's definitely a beautiful, softer brown color. I think it would be legible in most things, but the finer the nib, I think you would struggle just from what I've had experience with inks. Then we had a certain Smog. This one's not as exciting, but I feel like it's a subtle beauty, right? It has this kind of deeper tealy gray base, and then the shading goes even darker to almost a navy. This one had a very similar effect like the caramel almond waffles over here, with the kind of splotchy drying look. It looks so interesting drying, like you can see where I pushed in my little acrylic block. I just find that really fascinating. So I would want to know in painting how it would do, like if you'd get to see like the brush strokes or something, I guess is what I'm interested in. But a really nice color, a very legible color. I think it's really interesting. I don't think it's as exciting as some of the other ones we've seen already, but it's definitely a really nice color, and I feel like it's a really great standard color. It's a bit soft, but you may be able to get away with this one in more of a career setting just because of the color that it is. Then we had Butter and Strawberry Bagel. What an interesting color. Originally, when I swatched this down, I said it looked like Waringel's White Rabbit. Wrong. Completely wrong. This is nothing like Waringel's White Rabbit. Yeah, it's okay. So it's a bit more of like a pale yellow base, and then the shading goes deeper almost to an orange yellow, but it's still very yellow. And then the haloing is a bright purple. Wild. Absolutely wild. I think in writing you'd primarily just get the base that's the soft yellow color, but maybe if you had a really great stub nib or a really good flowing pen, you could get more of that purple haloing going through. Very interesting color. Like, I don't have anything like this. This is pretty wild to me. I don't have anything like a lot of these, honestly. Anyways, moving on. Then we had a certain Peachtree, which this one, when swatching down, was again more of a green, and as it dried, we can see kind of like a deeper teal haloing here with that kind of red-violet shading. Really interesting. I was expecting a bit more orange tones to come through, considering it's peach, but if you've ever grown peaches, sometimes the peach flowers are purple, so maybe that's what they were going through for the naming with this one. I don't know. I'm just throwing things out here. Anyways, the color of this though is very similar to a certain Smog. So if you just look at the writing alone, just the writing, the certain Smog is slightly darker and the certain Peachtree is slightly lighter, but they both have that kind of soft green-gray color. Really nice. I do feel like this one would be a challenge in certain nib sizes just because of how light the writing did come out. But then again, it really does just depend on the pen. And then we ended off with Elegy of the Fallen, if I can move this up enough. There we go. And the shading in this one is absolutely beautiful. The base color of this is more like Waringel's White Rabbit in that it is kind of like that soft pink gray, but the shading of this goes all the way down to that navy color. This is very, very similar to the caramel almond waffles up here, but I feel like it's a bit darker and the haloing factor is a lot stronger. Almost to the point where it looks like it could be even sheen versus halo because it is a bit shiny. It's not like oil slick shiny or anything, but it does have a bit of a sheen-like look to me, like a matte sheen, but it may just be a really strong ink halo. I don't know. Really interesting color though. I feel like the writing color of this is a bit more of like a dusty rose color, which is really pretty. It's a bit darker than the caramel almond waffles up here, so I think if you wanted a darker version with similar shading, the Elegy of the Fallen would be a good way to go. Again, I'm not sure on all the places you can get these inks, so I will have to do a bit of research on that. Overall, I feel like these are really great inks. The chroma shading alone just kind of sells it for me. I'm very much a fan of chroma shading inks and just shading inks in general, and seeing these and getting to experience them in person is really a treat. I'm very excited to explore these more in pens and in painting and see how it all turns out. If you have a favorite on the page, I would love to hear it. Also, if you have tried Kitty Inkpot inks before, please let me know how your experiences have been, maybe where you've purchased them, just in case anybody else was curious. I did purchase these, again, like I said, from Soe and Soe, which is an Australian-based company, but I did look before I came back, and they are available on AliExpress, but it's not all of these, and it's labeled a bit differently. They're harder to search on AliExpress than I thought, but they are available there. Anyways, I wish you the best. I hope you're having a great day. Be blessed, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.